Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Austin here, bringing you guys another StarCraft 2 commentary. This match is going to come from the WCS America round of 16 Group D winners match. I know that was quite a mouthful, but for those of you wondering, those are the specifics. It is going to be between Bomber, the Red Terran spawning at the top right of Youngsu. He is sponsored by Red Bull at the moment, and Polt, the Blue Terran spawning at the bottom left, sponsored by Cooler Master Storm, or playing for them, whichever you want to say. They do have another member among their ranks. I do not remember who, but I know that they have two players that they are now sponsoring. So this is a TvT match. It will close out my desire to start off my HOTS commentaries with a game of each matchup. And I have to tell you, it was pretty hard to hunt down a highly voted game. I look on Team Liquid at the tournament topics, the tournament threads, and they have a little recommended game section, so I was going through the different rounds of the tournaments for the replay packs I had. Kudos to Blizzard for sure for releasing an amazing WCS replay pack. Contains everything from the first seasons of 2014 and the 2013 Global Finals. That's why you'll see a lot of WCS games, just because I have so many on hand, and I consult Team Liquid for which ones are the most recommended and of the highest quality. But I have to tell you, it was quite hard to find two Terrans of a good skill level. I mean, obviously, most of the WCS Terrans are exceptionally talented, but I really wanted to go above and beyond and go to the top level. And finally track down this Polt versus Bomber game. Just as my GM source legend has told me, Terrans are just not doing nearly as well nowadays. Could be the result of balance, could be the result of just a general slump. In Wings of Liberty, Protosses were, I would say, arguably statistically the least frequent champions. I'm not saying that was a result of balance, just the way it panned out. And from what I've seen, I've just been checking tournament results, and I'm going to be watching upcoming tournaments. It seems like it's just been a reign of Protoss dominance, with Zerg taking some tournaments as well, and Terran has really taken a back seat. So we'll have to see how this TvT plays out and examine the details of the matchup. Last time I'll be saying this, or possibly, I'm really dragging this on. I am still relatively new to HOTS, so I'm getting the newer strategies and build orders under my belt. So do forgive that just for this game, for the last few games you may have seen, and maybe for one or two more to come. Bomber getting the factory, Polt getting a Reaper right away, and now going to get the reactor on that immediately. So we're seeing a lot more Reaper play in different matchups. In our last game, which was a TVP, we saw the Reaper out of MMA who played against MC. That was a lovely game to cast, quite a surprise. Do go watch it. I will not spoil it for you, and I'll force you to give me an extra view by going and watching that video if you want to see the result. Here is Polt moving out now with this Reaper. He's getting an expand on the back of this, so he's getting ready to macro up, but this Reaper will give him wonderful scouting, picks off an SCV there, and these Marines are just too slow. So he's going to have to keep this Reaper alive just because of its healing ability once it's out of combat. But if he loses it, it would just be inconvenient. And he does lose it, so it is inconvenient. There's the factory moving over there. Going to build a tech lab, and he's going for the starport right away. Looks like something of a 1-1-1. Of course, this is Wings of Liberty talk out of me. But it very well could be. At least he is starting with one of each form of unit building facility, while Polt is going for the command center of his own part. We're going to have to see how that plays out, because if you're the player expanding early and your opponent is opting for a more military-oriented build, as he is now getting ready to build... Oh, he's building a command center of his own, okay. But theoretically, if let's say Bomber was not building the expand, Polt would have to be very careful, because Bomber could very well wipe him out before that expand became important at all, or relevant in the dynamics of the game's economy. But if Polt could hold it off, he would have that extra base, and that would virtually close out the game. But that will not be our situation, because Bomber is getting a command center and a Raven as well. Interesting to see. This is actually the first time in any of the commentaries I've done thus far in HOTS that I have seen a Raven built, so we'll have to see in what capacity it is used. And now Polt has his command center fully transformed into an orbital. He's going to lift that off in short time and move it over. Scanning his opponent's base. Does he see the CC? Not quite. And does Bomber know that the opponent... No, he doesn't even know anything about Polt. He has virtually no scouting, and I guess maybe he just knows his opponent well enough from the Korean scene back in the day, because Bomber is a former StarTale player and Polt a former TSL player. We'll have to see, because Bomber has no scouting, and I find that quite surprising that he's just not even bothering. He hasn't scanned once. I'm just in disbelief here, constantly checking his vision. couple of Hellions coming out of Polt right now. We'll have to see. He's been a lot more aggressive of late, in this game at least, than his opponent. Because he got the Reaper, now he's getting the Hellions. And it's not even like he's sacrificing economy or expands for this, because he has the command center up and running before his opponent does. These Hellions just parking themselves here. The Raven going to play an interesting role here. They'll probably drop down a turret. I doubt a Seeker missile would quite be of any use in this situation. He does have a siege tank out now, so that'll essentially counter those Hellions, and he will be in range to deal damage to them, so Polt's going to be forced to pull them back. That aggression almost entirely negated as the Hellions pulled back. Polt now getting a Viking, so he is going to just have something to scout with and harass his opponents. Oh, this is Polt. I think I might have said Bomber or Polt. I don't remember. I'm a little bit tongue-twisted right now, but it is Polt getting a Viking, so he'll be able to harass his opponent's medevacs and take out this Raven. That makes a lot more sense. I think I said Polt was getting a Viking, and I was thinking about Bomber getting a Viking, and it made no sense for Bomber to get one. So I hope that situation makes some sense. So we do have a CC, a third CC coming out of Bomber. We'll have to see if he's going to go for a very fast third expander, just keep that in his main right now, just for the extra energy and mules and whatnot. Both players fairly even in terms of units, in terms of army supply, as you are now seeing. Polt a little bit ahead. Bomber is a little bit behind in a few aspects, but he's not out of this game by any stretch. He's held off the aggression just fine. The Reaper only picked off a couple of workers, so now we are seeing mules dropping down an engineering bay out of Bomber, so it looks like he's going to go... He's just going to go simple bio with tanks, which is a fairly commonplace TvT strategy. Maybe get out a good number of medevacs and try to drop its opponent. Of course, medevacs will be an important part of his army. Stimpack now coming out quite late out of Bomber, but it doesn't matter. He can take his time. And this completely brings rushing memories of Wings of Liberty TvT back to my head. Marine tank medevac, that was the strategy to be used. Maybe there might be some Widow Mines interspersed here, and maybe some Hellbats or something from Polt, but in truth, it seems pretty similar to what it was in Wings of Liberty. Just a lot of tech, some upgrades, such as the one weapons coming out of both players now, and just an economical game. I really enjoyed casting TvTs in Wings of Liberty because they were just fascinating strategical games that involved a lot of positioning with the tanks and the drops and the medevacs. And I don't know. Generally, they were longer macro games. I remember casting Koss versus Happy distinctly because it was like a 37-minute game, and there was just tanks everywhere. There were just Marine tank medevac all over the map, and it was a close game. So if you guys want a little bit of a throwback, maybe go check that out too. Look at this. I'm getting 3 views out of you if you're actually listening to these councils. Here is a medevac out of Bomber. We'll have to see what he decides to do with this. He is going to go and see if he can take out the Hellions. He now has them in his sights. A lot of CCs being built by both players. So the third finally being moved out of Bomber's base, and Polt does have a third very nearly completed. He has a lot better map control right now, destroying these rocks, and so he'll put a lot of pressure on his opponent's third, which is moving over to land. Now Bomber will likely see the fact that these rocks are being attacked, so he's going to be under imminent siege. Moving his forces over now, his siege tanks as well. Let's look at our unit counts. 28 Marines to 28, so we're dead even. Tanks very similar. That extra Raven's still out, and Polt has 2 extra Vikings to compensate. And we have 2 medevacs to 1, so the medevac counts are going to slowly increase with those reactored starports. There's a siege tank forcing Polt to retreat, and a Viking harassing the medevac. This just seems like it'll be a macro game for the next little while. Armory coming out of Bomber, and a sensor tower here, which could be very useful considering the cliff position of this base and the rocks and everything of the like. It's just handy to have a sensor tower. It's not that expensive. Too few players use it for the strategic purpose that it is made for. Yeah, it's not exactly applicable in too many contexts, but it can't hurt. It gives him so much vision of his opponent's units, and it's ultimately going to pay for itself by possibly saving bases. There is one armor coming out of both players. Bomber quite a bit ahead in that regard, but Polt will have his combat shields first. So where one player has an advantage in one regard, the other has it in another, so they're very, very even. Now Polt has 2 engineering bays in total, so he is going to get his 2 weapons at the same time. Stimpack coming out from him only now, so very late. But still, like I said, with the compensation overall in terms of upgrade, in terms of units of tech, they are fairly even. I don't know what Polt's doing here though, coming under attack, and there are some seeker missiles moving here, so what is he doing? This turret is going to take down the tank. Yes, he did a bit of damage to some of Bomber's harvesters, but ultimately I don't know if it's quite going to be worth it. He's under so much fire from his opponent's tanks. Now his are attacking, and only one of Bomber's is going to be in range of him, so I do finally agree with this move, but it looked really risky at first, and he lost the 2 tanks all at the onset, so right away I just thought it was a bad idea. But overall, Polt has lost less, and I'm just going to check one quick hotkey. Okay, there we go for our workers killed, 7-0. I'm still getting back up to date with my observer hotkey. So here we have Bomber moving out with his Marines. He's going to try to go for a vice grip movement. I don't even know if that's the right terminology, but I like it. It sounds very aggressive. The tank's going to stay sieged here, cutting off virtually any mining, but Bomber is moving out here with several little groups of Marines, and that's going to cut off Polt's reinforcements, so we're going to have to see how they engage here. The siege tanks are a complete non-factor. There is a smaller clump of Marines, but siege tanks quickly forcing Bomber back a little bit. We're going to have to see how they come to a final engage, if they come to a final engage, because both players have different clumps of units fighting each other. Those tanks over there are completely useless for Polt right now. Yes, he's keeping his opponent's third out of the game, but his own third is being taken out of the game. Close engage there, trading fairly evenly with the Marines. Polt has the lower count. He's going to have to bring some tanks over here to turn the tides. His third CC being forced to lift off, and I think we might have a higher harvester count for Bomber. We do indeed. Even though his own third is kept out of commission, Polt is under a lot of pressure right now from his opponent. If he can wipe out all these Marines, though, he needs to bring some of these tanks over, then that would constitute a huge advantage, as his opponent's now just going to lift off and drop off his units. I think Polt's going to handle that a tad bit better. He is going to get the rest of these survivors who are just desperately holding the line as they die. Now Polt is very well may lose these tanks. They are sieged up beautifully. They are going to fall, but I think that's a nice trade out of him. The resources lost still favoring Polt, so let's not forget that. But he could have kept those tanks, maybe. I don't know. His opponent sieged up quite late and took a while to actually eliminate them. So, like I said, fairly even trade. And both players trying to just get their thirds back to a mining position. The harvester gap slowly closing here. And I don't know. I like the Marine tank medevac. It's just like it was in Wings of Liberty. It's fun to watch. And we do see a lot of Marines on fire. I don't know if you heard the pop song, This Girl Is on Fire. Well, these Marines are on fire. Nice siege up there from Polt, taking the Zelnaga and taking a strategic high ground. He's got a sensor tower of his own, and that poor little sensor tower did fall earlier. So let's look again at our unit counts. We have a Marine advantage for Bomber, but a tank and medevac, or just a tank advantage for Polt. Now there will be an engage. The Marines moving in. I don't know what for, just for a strategic push, but I think Bomber is going to take out more than he loses. Now that's going to even out. So these engages are very back and forth. One player seems to have the upper hand at one point, but then he ends up running away, or he ends up splitting up his forces, or he ends up overcommitting, and then the other player evens it out. So these two players are trading very evenly right now, but I think there's going to be a cumulative engage in only a matter of minutes, because they're at that point in terms of supply and tech and macro where they need to throw their armies at one another, or make an attempt to do so. 3 weapons being researched out of both players. They have 2-2, so they're on par with regard to upgrades. Very standard timings for both of them. Another sensor tower coming out of Bomber, probably over at the third, but what's more important is this mass drop that's going to be dropping Marines into the main base of Polt, or not, because the stim out of Polt will force the medevacs to reconsider their actions. Now, as the Marines are only in the midst of dropping out, Polt considers an engage, but realizes he doesn't quite have the numbers. Still 1 Marine in each of these medevacs. Bomber will have to drop those forces out. Siege tanks still sieged up over here. So there's going to be this 1 Marine on the high ground spotting for Polt. And how much has he seen? I believe he did see the army. I was a little late on checking the vision. There are just random Marines stationed around as little watchdogs. And the Marines are still in the medevacs. One of them is going to get picked off, but thankfully no more than 1 Marine in those medevacs. Good engage here. Nice concave from Bomber. He's going to reinforce. Polt has to be careful. 3 siege tanks moving now. Where are the siege tanks from Polt? They're a little bit far behind. So I just don't like his army positioning right now. He does have some siege tanks to fall back on. He just doesn't have a big enough clump of Marines. He has some 2 separated, a little patch over there, some tanks over there, some tanks over there. And Bombers, meanwhile, accumulated his forces into 1 army. Not counting Polt out, just saying, I like Bomber's idea of using one major fighting force. He is losing some Marines though, stims and then runs away, so that's going to lose him some health and take him a little bit of time to actually get back into the fight at full health. 3 armor coming out of both players as well, so they will have those 3-3 upgrades in some time, or 3-2 at least for the next major engage as I foresee it. The vehicle and ship weapons coming out, 2 vehicle and ship weapons coming out, so that's going to play a factor for the tanks, and we'll give them a little bit of a bonus. Another CC coming out of Bomber. They're both on 3 bases. They're both on approximately 57-54 harvesters, and now there will be a siege up from both players, roughly in sync. It looks like Bomber has the upper hand in this engage, and he's going to take out a lot of his opponent's tanks. Very nice engage, and my mouse goes Ari there, and I apologize for that, but we get the gist of it. Bomber got a nice little positioning there, and these medevacs going to compulsively heal up the Marines. I am going to go replay that battle for your guys' viewing pleasure at the end of this game, just so you can see it, because I do apologize for missing it, but I don't want to restart the entire cast. Here's another fight here. Beautiful sandwich out of Polt. He's going to pick off these medevacs that still have 1 Marine in them each. Not the best move out of Bomber. He just gets completely crushed. A lot of his tanks falling. So Polt's split up my army strategy has paid off. I was criticizing it, but Bomber, the problem with that is live by the sword, die by the sword. He got caught with his army out of position. He had it in position and he showed the benefits, and then he had it out of position and he showed the drawbacks. Polt is now going to move with combined forces, just stimming up and running towards his enemy's base. Bomber's still having those single Marines. I know I'm really criticizing this, but it could have made a slight difference if he had those extra 5-6 Marines. And now Polt is going to be at a siege tank standoff. A lot of scans coming out of both players' forward vision, and it looks like Polt is going to have the advantage here. I don't know, quite honestly, if Bomber's going to be able to come out of this alive. Army supply is favoring Polt by approximately 24. He's going to try to move around here with the Marines to get a nice little surprise attack, but I think Polt is going to have none of that. He has some reinforcing Marines moving over here. The Zelnanaga Watchtower is taken by Polt, and he knows it's coming. So the tanks just trading fairly evenly, but generally overall in the favor of Polt. The 3 ship and vehicle weapons are being researched out of Polt, and his bio, his Marines, doesn't really have any other bio, are at 3-3. So too are his opponents, but still, it's just a handy set of upgrades to have. This base is going to be wiped out here by Bomber, but the problem is he can play guerrilla as much as he wants, or use guerrilla tactics, but in the end his forces in his main are just getting completely throttled by Polt, who's 60 supply ahead. So it looks like we're going to see a GG fairly shortly here out of our Red Terran player. I called it wrong the last time. I thought MC had it in the bag, but it's turned out the other way. I just spoiled that game for you inadvertently, but if you had not gone over to see it by now, you never would have seen it. So we do have the GG coming out of Bomber here. Good game overall from both of our players. I just like Polt's strategy. I didn't at first. I was a little apprehensive because, hey, you know, didn't seem like the smartest idea to have clumps of siege tanks and clumps of Marines, but he did have heightened map control as a result, and he was able to catch his opponent out of position. I will go find that engage at some place here. I think it was about maybe 19 minutes, maybe a little bit more, just for you guys to see. Okay, now we're just getting to 1936 where it happened. It might have been a little bit earlier even. Yeah, it was right about there, so I'll go back a little more. Just bear with me here, just so you guys can see that engage, because I accidentally shifted my mouse in the wrong direction. So I think it was about here. I'll just go plus, so we can do. Yeah, it was after this point. Okay. So right there around was where our engage happened. Maybe a little bit after. Yep, there was the concave initially. And then there was the fight. There we go, finally. So as you can see, very nice siege up at a Bomber. I thought he had it, but Polt reacting very quickly. He loses the siege tanks, but he does not lose the overall battle. So I'm pretty sure that was the gist of what my mouse missed. I hope you guys have enjoyed this commentary, guys. Good game out of both our players. I'll see you next time with any random matchup because I've covered all of them by now. Just good games, right? See you later.